Hello, I'm Anika Howard, and welcome to the Global Gaming Woman Fair Game podcast. We are here for a special G2E Global Gaming Expo edition, and I'm so excited to be here with the Patty Becker. So we're very, very excited to have you on the show and love to really kind of just dig a little bit deep and let people get to know you a little bit better. I always love to say that people see your glory, but they don't know your story. And so I want to kind of know your story and your origin story so that people can understand kind of just the journey that you've taken in this industry. So I'd like to start there. Can you talk about how did you get introduced to gaming?
So I got my law degree. It was just right on almost my 24th birthday. And prior to going to law school, I was a second grade school teacher.
Wow.
And I had been working as a lawyer for probably 4 or 5 years. And I went to work for then Attorney General Richard Bryan. And when he interviewed me, I told him I wanted to be at the Gaming Control Board and Gaming Commission because they'd never had a female deputy there. And so when he hired me, that's where I started.
Wow.
So I started in the Attorney General's office as a deputy AG for the Gaming Control Board and Commission.
And how did you know that gaming was where you wanted to be?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think I did know. Because I had been practicing in Carson City and in government,
Okay. Yeah.
I knew that seemed like a great career path, that was, an upward position. At the time, I was what was called state industrial attorney, and I had been appointed to that by Mike O'Callahan, and it was a 4-year term appointment, so I think I felt like I could ask for what I wanted.
Yeah. And that's an important behavior to do. And so you started with something interesting that you were an elementary school teacher. So what made the pivot between teacher to attorney?
My parents owned a shoe store, a children's shoe store, and sold shoes for a living. I had never met an attorney growing up, but I read the book To Kill a Mockingbird, and I was an avid reader, but I realized later in life I actually did a reading for an elementary school in my neighborhood, and I read that book out loud, and I realized how much it had touched me. And so I think from the time that I was maybe in 7th, 8th grade, people would ask what I wanted to be, and I would say a lawyer, and people would laugh at me. And I went to undergraduate school, and it was kind of like you could be a nurse or a teacher. So I said, okay, I'll be a teacher. And I aced that in no time, and I still wanted to be a lawyer. And one day I was in the teacher's lounge, and I said out loud to the other teachers that I'd always wanted to go to law school, and they said, do it, do it. What you're doing today, if you stay in teaching, unless you go into administration, this is exactly what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. So I did. I took the LSAT and went off to law school.
So one of the things we say consistently on the podcast is stories are permission slips. And so that is just kind of a perfect example of it. And that's also why we love sharing stories like this, because there could be someone, sitting or listening that has, made a decision, but that's not where their true passion is. And, this can give them the courage or to say, here's an example of someone that's done it. So I appreciate you sharing kind of that kind of story with us. So kind of now we kind of go focus on gaming. You're kind of an attorney. You're kind of on this path to go to being on the Gaming Control Board. What are some of the challenges, or what are some of the things that you faced in your journey, and how did you overcome them?
So after I had been at the gaming with the AG's office, I think for maybe a year and a half or 2 years, I was promoted to Chief Deputy Attorney General for the Gaming Control Board and Gaming Division. And at the time, the chairman of the Gaming Control Board, and I don't want to name names, was running against his boss, was running against my boss, the Attorney General for Governor. And Harry Reid Senator Harry Reid, was the chairman of the Gaming Commission. It was hard. It was a political minefield because the chairman of the Gaming Control Board decided that he wasn't going to give the deputies the summaries, the background information before we went into meetings. So we had to show up at a meeting cold, like unprepared, because what he wanted was to show that we weren't competent. And it was during that time that I argued 3 very prominent Nevada Supreme Court cases. One put Tony Spilatro in the Black Book. It was argued against Oscar Goodman, who was mayor of Las Vegas, but also the mob's lawyer. And it was the first time they allowed cameras in the courtroom in the state of Nevada. And so the argument was televised. I mean, excerpts were on all of the news. And it was huge. And I'll never forget it because I walked into the hearing when they let me know they were going to have cameras there. I called my boss, Dick Bryan, and said, I think you want to argue this because there's going to be cameras. And he said, oh no. But he said, I'll go with you.
Yeah.
And so we walked in together and he sat beside me and I argued the case. And now I still am close with him, and I tease him that he was like my wingman because I did the arguing, and somehow right in the middle of that argument, it just snapped for me. I just got it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I argued that one and 2 other prominent Supreme Court cases during that 18 to 2-year period. Yeah. And I just gained more and more self-confidence. Yeah. But I worked my ass off. I worked so hard. Yeah. I wish I could tell you it was easy. It wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it was hard being the first woman. Any job where you're the first woman is hard.
No, I mean, just listening to you, we're at this intersection of total male domination, right? Unfortunately, so you have legal, you have the political element of it, and you have gaming that are all, you know, just traditionally very male-centered, male-dominated industries and spaces. But then you also had someone that, you know, just kind of showing that allyship can be quiet. Just basically the act of showing up and sitting there and being your wingman, and kind of in helping you kind of navigate those waters. Can you talk about other people that have kind of helped you kind of navigate some of those paths as you kind of started and you know, progressed in your career?
Yes. So it was almost impossible for me to have female mentors.
Yeah.
But I was really lucky. My first job out of law school, I was law clerk for the Chief Justice of the Nevada Supreme Court, Cameron Batcher, the father of 3 daughters. And then, and we should talk in a minute about being on the Gaming Control Board, but when I left the Gaming Control Board, I went to work at Harrah's, and my boss was Phil Satry, and he has 4 children, but the 4th was his son. He had 3 daughters. And I think girl dads at the time, as bosses, made a huge difference. Those men wanted me to succeed. I was never a threat. They wanted me to learn, and they wanted to be successful. And later in my career, I had a lawyer, Frank Schweck, who really, and there's some other men too, that they offered my name when they were talking about board of directors positions and compliance committee positions. And you need someone in the room who's going to surface your name.
Absolutely.
You can be as prepared and as competent as you want to be, but if somebody doesn't say, what about Patty Becker? And I was lucky they did.
No, and so when you talk about girl dads who are the best, but then you talk about Phil Satry, and so I have a Phil Satry story. So Phil Satry, you know, I started my career at Harrah's. I didn't realize they had the intersection as a president's associate under Phil Satry, and so I remember like just kind of being welcomed and by him and having one-on-ones with Phil. and just kind of really understanding, especially as I grew in the casino industry, how special and how unique and how important that was, and how, he was just a very special kind of king among kings in terms of how he approached in kind of the allyship and what he was able to do to support. And I look back, especially as we're looking at this 25-year anniversary for G2E, that one of my first G2Es, I remember sitting at the table with him and Jan Jones and Fred Keaton when Phil Slattery was getting inducted into the AGA Hall of Fame. Just ironically, we're kind of doing that ceremony tonight. So it's just kind of this full circle moment, and there are certain people whose names you hear that just kind of give you like just really kind of happy memories, and he's one of them. So
I, to this day, am still friends with Phil and Jennifer.
yeah,
His spouse was so kind to me, and I have two sweet stories. One is I had my son when I was 36, and I was already with Harrah's, and I was home on maternity leave, and Phil asked me to come into the office, and I was petrified. I thought I was going to get fired because I thought, why would he want me to come into the office on maternity leave? So I show up, and he promoted me. He promoted me from vice president to senior vice president and made me in charge of the entire company. And
wow.
I never forget, I left his office, and I thought, I have
happy
this
tears.
I have this beautiful baby boy, and I'm a senior vice president at Harrah's. I had the best life ever. And then I think it was probably 2 years later, Phil brought in the Harvard professors. He was back in Memphis at the time.
Yeah.
And they had a
Gary Loveman, right?
Yes, they had a 3-week training program for all of the senior executives. Oh wait, I have a third story too. And so they invited me, and at the same time they invited me, Jennifer calls me up and she says, I know you're not going to want to leave James, my son, for 3 weeks, so just during that 3-week stay, just come and stay with us at our home in Memphis.
Yeah.
Their son, Peter, was almost the same age as James, and they had childcare, so I just stayed at the house. It was heartwarming that they both would go out of their way for me to that degree. And then we have the trip to Alaska. So Harrah's used to take like 25 people, men, to Alaska fishing every year. It was a huge deal because they would take vendors. Mm-hmm. So they would take like, IGT and Chuck Matheson, and they would bring all of these. At that time it was Holiday Inns and
Promise. Yeah,
it was a huge company. And so somebody had dropped out of the group, and Phil went to the CEO and said, it's Patty's turn. You need to take Patty. So he calls me up and he said, you're going to go on the fishing trip to Alaska. The only woman with 24 men. But he was so good. He said, go up and see Russ up at Tahoe, at the Tahoe property. He's going to take you and get you outfitted because you need waiters and vests, and if anyone has met me, I am not an out girly type of girl. A girly girl. I'm a girly girl. I'm not. I went up there. They got me all outfitted, and I remember at the time tried to memorize every kind of off-colored joke that I knew. Not terrible, but just a smidgen, so that I could make everyone laugh and feel at home and comfortable. And I spent an entire week in Alaska going out fly fishing, which I'd never done in my life. And every day they sent me with a different group of men.
I just have this visual of you. I cannot even.
And I met them all on a whole different level. And that's when I realized what a difference it makes for, like, at that time people would golf together. Yeah. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to start Global Gaming Women.
Great, that's my next question. Yeah, kind of that fellowship. The fellowship is so important, and the connection outside of the professional. But yeah.
Yes.
Good. Now that's great. Those are some amazing memories and some amazing experiences to be able to share. And so let's talk. we kind of let's talk about global gaming women. And so, I mean, one of the things you did, and I kind of found the same thing true, is that at least early on in my career, it was hard to find female mentors. It was hard to find anyone that was kind of going down that path because there was no one. And so now, I mean, what you and kind of the original creators of GGW has created is just this fellowship of women and allies, a fellowship of people that really uplift women. And so, can you talk about kind of that journey and what are you most proud of when you think about the legacy that you've left with GGW?
You know, in my life, there are some of the things that you stop and think about you're proud about. I'm really proud that I raised a incredible human being as my son.
Yeah.
Okay? He gets it, he understands it. I'm really proud of that. But I'm also thrilled about global gaming women. So I was always out front and alone.
Yeah.
You know, there was Elaine Wynn and there was Claudine Williams, but they came with spouses and quite a bit of money, wealth. And I came from somebody who sold shoes. It's different. I'd never been exposed to country clubs. I just didn't have that kind of sophistication. It was something I had to learn, not something that was intuitive. And it was lonely. It was hard and it was lonely. And I went back. I've had a number of different jobs, and I mean, I've done everything in this industry. But I went back and I was executive director for the International Gaming Institute at UNLV, and I did that for Stan Fulton. And at the time I thought, you know, maybe we could have an organization where other women supported women and they got to meet mentors. And I decided to do this Kick Up Your Heels, which was, the original was suggested that you could come if you paid the cost of your last pair of shoes. So if you had bought flip-flops and you wanted to contribute $15, you could. But if you bought Christian Louboutins and wanted to contribute $1,000, you could. And then I had invited the American Gaming Association women, and within 6 months they decided to do a female initiative, a women's initiative, that then morphed into Global Gaming Women. And I was on the board and everything from day one on all of that. However, I will say, the first 5 years of Kick Up Your Heels and doing Global Gaming Women it was hard. We were creating something new, and we wanted to create an environment that just made everyone feel like they could succeed and that they had support. But the last 10 years, and I have not been on the board the last 10 years, what the new boards have created, what the next generations have created, I can't even tell you. It so warms my heart. It is amazing what next generations have done with what we started. And it is one of the things, when I go to Kick Up Your Heels every year, and when I come in for G2E and I meet women, and when I get to do my PB honorees, it's just, I love it. It just makes me feel like I gave back. And I gave back in a good way. I'm really proud of that.
Yeah. I mean, and I just want to say thank you for everything. I mean, even the fact of this podcast, the Fair Game podcast, is, you know, really a tribute to the work that kind of you have done. And I did not realize that Kick Up Your Heels predated Global Gaming Women. So that's amazing too. You always learn something new when we have these conversations and these talks. So I want to thank you so much for your time. This has been such a wonderful conversation to have with you and to spend some time with you, because we don't get a chance to do this. And really just on behalf of all of us gals and the co-hosts of the Fair Game podcast, just thank you for joining us, and thank you for taking time out of a very busy G2E schedule to have a chat.
And I do have one comment, because the reason I know Anika and the reason I know Cicely, who is sitting across from me here, is because they have both been past PB honorees at Kick Up Your Heels.
Yeah.
So aren't I lucky that every year I get to meet, I don't select the women, but I get to meet these new 5 or 6 women every year that I get to honor. And it's value added to my life. So thank you.
No, and it was very impactful for me, and it was very, I feel like I just felt very humbled to be part of it, and I felt very seen to be recognized, and it was a wonderful thing to just, be celebrated by all of your peers. And so thank you for making this opportunity a possible and laying the foundation for, just continuing to level up all the things that we can do with Global Baby Women.